Hi, everybody. Welcome to Joplin, Missouri and GNPI to another episode of Faith Greater Than Fear. My name is Mike Schrage, and I get to serve here as president of GNPI here in Joplin. And we have, for the last 18 months or so, continued to have just an honor and privilege of talking to people of faith, both local here in Joplin, regional in the USA, some even international, on what their perspective is of life in the last 18 months with COVID, how it's impacted them, how they've responded, what's God taught them, how are they going to be post-COVID as we now live in this time. And yet, interestingly, we have places in our country and places in other countries around the world where there's another virulent variant of the thing. And so people are still having to be locked down, still having to struggle, still having losses, and still hopefully having their ears close to God and their faith growing strong. So today, as a hopeful help to all of you listening today, we have a good friend of ours here in Joplin, and her name is Rachel Grindle. Rachel, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Great. Rachel looks great. But after a couple of minutes of her telling you all that she does, you may go, my goodness, Mike, why are we even talking to this lady today? So, Rachel, take it away. What are you busy about? What's God got you doing these days?
Yeah, so primarily I'm a mom. I have twin boys who just turned 3 years old in May. And then I have a little boy who will be 6 months this week. So August, Beckler, and Cascade, I get the privilege of being their mama. And then I am a PhD student currently at Johnson University studying in leadership studies. And I have the honor of being an adjunct professor at Ozark Christian College in Joplin, Missouri, teaching in the organizational leadership program. And then my husband and I are preparing to become church planners to plant a missional community church in our neighborhood here in Joplin. So I think that those are the bigger things that I have going
on. Okay, well, I'm not sure it's wishing you another cup of coffee, whether you can't have that yet or not, but anyway.
Oh, I can have it.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. So tell me, how has COVID changed Rachel and her family's perspectives? What was God speaking to you? What did you discern and learn?
Yeah, so there's a lot, right? And I think for many of us, it'll even be years from now before we truly fully understand the impact that this once in a lifetime phenomena that's occurred for all of us is going to have. I will say from very practical standpoints, my husband and I financially relied early on in COVID, we relied on Airbnb income. We rented out homes, bedrooms in our house, and that got shut down and stayed shut down for a while. And so just financially speaking, we were kind of in a hard spot. I travel and speak regularly, and all of that got canceled last year. So financially, we were dependent on those stimulus checks that came in and felt like that was a great gift from the Lord just to help us to get through what we were doing. In addition, my husband's a full-time pastor. I'm a part-time teacher plus full-time student, and our kids would go to daycare a few times a week so that I would have some space to work on my studies. And we didn't do that for months. So my husband and I had to figure out how are we going to co-parent equally during the day, where he would take the mornings and I would work, and then I would have the afternoons and he would work. And we just had to learn how to be really flexible and honor one another and honor each other's things and passions and pursuits during that time. I also got pregnant during COVID. And I think one of the hardest things for me in that was I got pregnant when they didn't really know how it was impacting pregnant women. So some of the information was you're fine as long as you don't get it in your third trimester. I had a random individual reach out to me early on in the pregnancy telling me about a friend of hers who lost her baby at 35 weeks because of COVID. And I'm like, I don't understand why you're telling me this. That just is planting some fear in my heart. And then it so happened that I got COVID at 35 weeks pregnant and was sent to the hospital. I went to urgent care because I had rapid onset struggling to breathe. And the doctor there said, you can't drive yourself. Either we're calling an ambulance or somebody needs to come get you right now and get you to the hospital. This could be really serious. And of course, I'm there, and Steven has to drop me off, my husband, and I'm there by myself. And they're telling me, like, this could be fatal for you and the baby. We've got to run these tests. And there's a risk of running these tests to your unborn baby. So, what are you going to choose? And so it's in those moments, right, where it's just like, Jesus, what are you doing? And help. So I would say, and thankfully everything was fine. My baby's healthy, but delivering a baby during a pandemic where nobody can come and visit, it's just there's a lot of little losses. We didn't lose our job. We didn't lose our home. We weren't at risk of being evicted. There's so much that we have to be grateful for. But it's those little losses that kept ticking up that just you sit back and realize there's a lot to grieve over this last year and a half.
So flexibility between each spouse and balancing childcare and parenting and work, and then gratefulness. Those are two good qualities. And the other is, now as people of faith, how do I handle those itty bitty losses? And I think you said earlier, we don't know all of the outcomes and impacts for probably a couple of years. And I think you're onto something. What does Rachel see as what is going to change either in your lives or your neighborhood or our community at large in the USA because of these experiences of COVID and these little losses, big losses?
Yeah. So I have two hopes. I think a major hope that I have is that I know what it felt like a week ago when I got to spend extended time with my family for the first time in a year and a half, and how grateful I felt, how good it felt to hug my nieces and nephews and my brother and sister. So my hope is that we don't lose that. My hope is that we would have enough of that loss that we felt when we couldn't be with one another, that we really would continue to seek that face-to-face connection, right? That we wouldn't fall back into, well, we can just meet over Zoom. It's fine. We know how to do that. But realize, like, no, when it's safe, when it's healthy, let's make the extra effort to be in person, because there is just something so much richer when that can happen. I think my other hope, honestly, Mike, is that the church at large would re-engage with lament and learn how to do that well. I think we have done a disservice, particularly, I would say, in the Western church, of needing to tie everything up with a nice little bow, right? And God is good, and He is. And at the same time, things can still be hard and things can still be painful. And so what does lament look like, right? Where we can be honest and raw and real about these losses that we've all experienced at different levels and in different ways, and allow Jesus to be in the midst of that lamenting with us, rather than feeling like that's unholy or not sacred enough or not good enough to bring to Him. So that really is a hope of mine.
That is really rich, and I think, yes, we've learned a lot about the value of family during COVID, the value of community, I think, is what you also talked about. And for some, though you didn't mention it, it's just nature. It kind of detoxifies us a bit. And so the walks with family in our community is kind of the trifecta of kind of in enhancing us. But going back to the point of enhancing us to carry the burden, Paul talks about, hey, we rejoice when you rejoice, but we are also sorrowful when you're sorrowful. So how does relevant Western lamenting look in Joplin, Missouri?
I think that's a good question. I think we're learning that in some ways as a community. I think some of the unearthing of racial tensions that were really kind of exposed during the pandemic, the unity walks that are starting in our city where people are coming together and honoring the past, not washing over it, acknowledging hurt and pain without needing to say, but look how it's been redeemed. Just holding that tension of we're not fully there yet. It's not fully redeemed. It's not fully restored. There are some things that have been taken from us in this pandemic that will not be restored this side of heaven. And you will hold that tension until you get to heaven. And helping people learn to be okay with that and not to sit against that or push that away, right? One of the things that I'm studying with my PhD, I'm passionate about with my students, I think has bubbled up to the surface for so many, and learning how to like live in lockdown mode with so many people is conflict. And that's the focus of my dissertation, and learning how to engage in conflict in healthy, productive ways is this lost art, I think. And I think for good reason. I don't think we were actually created or meant for conflict. I think we were meant for perfect unity and peace, that in the imago Dei of who we were made to be. And I think it's a result of the fall. So I think everybody has to learn how to do it. I think it's the same thing with lament. I don't think we were made for lament, but I think it's a gift to us if we can learn to receive it as such. That just like conflict, if we can learn these tools, that it becomes a more richer, fuller experience where we don't just have to ignore what's hard. We can embrace it in a way that helps us to move forward.
I have vision only in one eye. And for a season, there was some work on the other good eye. So sightlessness, being temporarily blind, when it is so easy for me to come up every morning. Wow, I can see. It is so beautiful, God, of what you do. Lepers are very, very much wishing they could have pain, because if they had pain, they may live longer. And that sounds ironic. And so what you're talking about is that God's gift of this untidiness of the world, this lamenting, can be kind of this blessing. It makes us sensitive. If we'll let it sensitize us, we will be in awe again and drink in all that God is doing. How do we, on practical ways, what have you found, you and Stephen, to do that, to not lose the preciousness of the family, not be just running over and tying everything in a bow with, there's a march here, there's one comment, everything's good now racially. What small intentional things do you see doing yourselves, or say, when I get not so much babies so young, I want to do this and can do this, so.
Yeah, I think Brene Brown has offered a tool that's been really helpful for us, and it's the story I'm telling myself. And we use that a lot in our marriage, in our family. I use that in my relationships outside when there's conflict, when there's pain, when there's tension. And it just allows for somebody else's truth to intercept my own. And oftentimes it challenges it and it changes it, right? So anytime I'm wanting to sit in that victim place, or woe is me, or this whole world's against me and it's hard, being able to invite another's perspective has been really helpful. Another tool, as simple as it sounds, but as painful as it is to actually let it happen, is just to say, Holy Spirit, tell me the truth. Tell me the truth. And And sometimes the truth is it's real hard and you can cry and you need to cry. And I think that's part of it. It's just not being afraid of those harder, scarier emotions and creating space to let that be okay.
Mm.
And we teach our kids that. So a lot of what we've been doing right now with our 3-year-olds is naming emotions and helping to give space. Like you're feeling frustrated, you're feeling sad, and not fixing it for them. And sadness is a real emotion and it's okay. And it is sad that your brother took your toy from you, right? Like, but I think so often we like get over it, get over it, get over it. And we're training them from such a young age to then when we get to be adults, the only narrative we have is get over it, get over it, get over it. And we don't truly honor it.
Mm.
And I've learned through therapy and a lot of other different things sitting with Jesus that for me to actually get over something, I have to walk through it.
Mm.
And so honoring those hard spaces and giving space and just truly walking through it rather than pretending it's not there.
Yeah, yeah, good words. So our time is quickly coming to a close. I love what you said. Ask the Holy Spirit, tell me the truth. Um, and we have to be attuned to hear it and then willing to act on it when we do hear it as well. With the time we have left, a couple minutes here, Rachel, I know you've got in the midst of your studies and being a leader and a mom and other things, there's a book deep in your heart you're wanting to write someday. Finish up our time just telling us what sneak preview for our audience is what that's going to be in maybe a couple of years, and any final words that you would then also like to offer of encouragement in this time together.
Yeah. So really it's about conflict and discovering a new way of engaging with conflict, not dealing with it, seeing it as a positive, not a negative, that when you learn the tools and learn how to separate your worth from people's criticism or your identity from your work or your ideas, that conflict actually becomes a gift to relationship and it becomes a gift to organizations and to churches. So that's a lot of what the book will be about. But my encouragement is to honor where you're at, right? That when we came up on a year with my students, we marked the year that they were sent home early for spring break, thinking they were going to come back in a couple of weeks, and they didn't return. And just really taking space of like, it's been a year. And that's a significant milestone. And it is significant that there is not a person on earth living today who does not know or has experienced COVID in one way or another. Like there's something unifying about that idea that's really beautiful. That anywhere you travel in the world from here on out, you will have something that connects you to every other human being. And I think that's actually pretty incredible. So as an encouragement to individuals who are back in that space of lockdown and feeling restricted and isolated, it's okay to be upset about that. It's okay to be angry about that. It's okay to feel lonely about that. But you're not alone. And my encouragement would be that you would find creative ways, safe, healthy, creative ways to find connection. One of the things that we did when we first went into lockdown here in Joplin, I organized a bear hunt in my neighborhood. And all I did was reach out to neighbors and ask them to put stuffed bears in their windows. And then the neighborhood kids, whenever they could with their families, would walk around and try to find bears. And it was such a simple way, but it brought our neighborhood together. And it felt like even though we can't be tangibly together, we're together. We're connected. We're still experiencing something communally. And so find those things. that you guys can do to still feel connected and not isolated.
Rachel, thank you. Appreciate you. So good and valuable a conversation. For all of you today, we hope you've been blessed by what Rachel Grindle has shared. And if you have been, then there's an opportunity for you to multiply that by forwarding it on and letting others people know on your social media channels as well. And so we want to, from here in Joplin, from Good News Productions International, wish all of you the best. There is a podcast version of this as well that you can stay tuned for. So, Rachel, thank you so much. And for all of you who staying tuned to us, God blessings to you. And may your faith always, always be greater than any fear. God bless you.